transit is and has always been in New York sort of like air and water. It's a public service that needs to be supported. It really is what makes New York and the New York experience possible.
This is Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of the world's leading transit executive podcast, Transit Unplugged In-Depth, this week with Kathy Rinaldi, who is the president of Metro North Railroad and the interim president of Long Island Railroad in New York City. Kathy, thank you so much for being with us today on the show.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on in New York. Of course, the Big Apple. And you're running two of the biggest commuter railroads in the world, clearly two of the biggest ones in our country. I guess tell us some about them. Tell us about the railroad and what's going on there.
Yeah. So thank you again for having me here today. Yeah, I've been the president of Metro North since February of 2018. And I've been almost a year in the interim job at Long Island Railroad. And it's obviously, a really exciting, challenging time for the entire industry as we recover from COVID. Obviously restoring ridership and getting ourselves, back after the pandemic is obviously, something that the entire industry is dealing with. And then on the Long Island side, especially, there's a lot of major capital investments coming online that are really going to revolutionize travel on Long Island. And it's really exciting to be, at the helm of the Long Island Railroad at a time when these investments are, finally coming to fruition.
That's great. So when it comes to these two railroads, kind of explain to our listeners, what they are, how they work, how they tie into the overall MTA, the situation there in New York.
Yeah. So people have heard of the MTA. It's the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. It's kind of the kind of mothership for the entire range of transit providers within the New York Metropolitan Area. So both Metro North and Long Island Railroads are Long Island Railroad are subsidiaries of the MTA. So Long Island Railroad runs from Penn Station, Atlantic Terminal in Brooklyn, and, soon Grand Central Madison and Grand Central, in the Grand Central Terminal Complex out to Long Island, as far east as Montauk and Greenport. Since the, 1800s, it's one of the oldest established commuter rails out there. Metro North, just earlier this month in January, celebrated its 40th anniversary. So Metro North is another MTA subsidiary, and it runs service east of the Hudson River on three lines, the Hudson, the Harlem, and the New Haven. The New Haven within the state of Connecticut is operated under a service agreement with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And we also have services west of Hudson on the Pascack Valley and Port Jervis lines that are run under contract with New Jersey Transit. So
these are traditional commuter rail services. I was earlier on the podcast, actually the first episode of the year, I was grateful to have on the CEO of another major commuter rail system, Jim Derwinski, who's CEO of Metro Commuter Rail in Chicago. And he was giving me kind of a view of how ridership is in the industry coming back from the pandemic. And of course, I think all 31 of the commuter rail systems in the country are still experiencing, a slow recovery in the weekdays, but a faster recovery on nights and weekends with ridership. Some are actually over 100%. Tell us about what's happening with your railroad when it comes to ridership.
Yeah, I would say that's a reasonable statement of what's happening on both Metro North and Long Island Railroad as well. I mean, we never really expected at the very beginning of the pandemic for discretionary ridership to come back as quickly as it did. But really throughout the pandemic and even now, we can continue to see very, very strong ridership on the weekends. And we've been running 100% of our pre-COVID service at both railroads on the weekends for a while now. So we're back at 100%. During the week, it's a little bit different. And mostly that's because of just hybrid work. Both railroads have kind of become, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday railroads. That's where we see the highest ridership. If you look back to the pre-COVID baseline, between 65, 70%, maybe a little bit higher than 70% some days, of our pre-COVID ridership on Wednesday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Right. Monday and Friday, people are taking those long weekends. So it's quite different, right? So we're not necessarily seeing that traffic come back on Mondays and Fridays. So it's just a bit different. The one thing that I would say though, especially at Metro North is that, Metro North for many years now has had a very robust reverse commute. We have employment centers in White Plains, New York, and Stamford, Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut, New Rochelle, other locations that draw people out of the city. And, we've been seeing, nice recovery on those reverse commute lines as well. And one of the things that we're really excited about on Long Island Railroad is the recent completion of what we call the third track project, which is the construction of a third track along the main line. And the expectation is that this will also really boost opportunities for the reverse commute on Long Island, which just because of capacity issues has never really seen that. I think, I'm sure Jim probably said this as well. I think, we're trying to be as opportunistic as possible in terms of how we think about bringing people back to the system, and not necessarily assuming that our core ridership is going to be, stockbrokers getting on the train in the morning, going to the central business district, and then coming home at night. I think we need to be more thoughtful in terms of how we can make the rail experience something that other people may want to take to be able to get to where they need to go.
Yeah, that's good. Why don't we unpack that a little bit, what that could look like, or what it is looking like for you now? I know one of the big things you've done, as you just mentioned, was make an amazing investment in this Grand Central Madison. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Grand Central Madison, it's been known for many, many years as East Side Access. This is the project that commenced in the early 2000s and was talked about well before then to bring direct Long Island Railroad service into a concourse below the existing Grand Central Terminal. So that project is nearing completion. There are some final testing items that need to be done before we can actually commence revenue service, which we hope to be announcing an opening day soon. It gives, there's a lot of advantages with respect to just sort of the straight up rail operation for Long Island. It gives you a second terminal location within Manhattan, which is great, kind of that operational flexibility when there's, issues at Penn, because, Penn can be a really tough environment. Amtrak in coming years will be doing the East River Tunnel replacement. So by being able to divert so much service into Grand Central, we're able to weather that major capital project much, much better for our customers. The thing that I like to talk about in terms of, GCM coming online imminently is the connectivity that's going to provide for the two railroads. Currently, in Grand Central, when Long Island only runs out of Penn, there's not a lot of connectivity. I actually live in the Metro North service territory, and my parents live in the Long Island Railroad service territory. I never take the train to see them. It's too much of a hassle. You have to walk over to Penn from Grand Central, or you take the subway or whatever, and you just don't do it. And I do think that connectivity within the same complex is going to provide tremendous opportunities for customers of both railroads to be able to cross over and take the other service. For folks like me who live up in the Hudson Valley to get to JFK, you don't do that by rail now. So that's going to provide great opportunities for Yankee fans on Long Island to be able to take the train up to Yankee Stadium. Again, that doesn't really happen now. So I do think as we try to attract more riders back to both systems, I think that connectivity within the Grand Central complex is going to provide an enormous opportunity, which, not just good for the railroad, but good for the region as a whole.
You mentioned that weekends are picking up. How about nights and maybe midday? Are you seeing any increases in kind of these off-peak periods?
Yeah, yes. People are taking the train for different reasons. Medical appointments, whatever. But, I think early on at the pandemic, at least, I was hearing a lot about, the flattening of the peak, and we weren't necessarily going to see the ridership be as peaky as it had been previously. Our ridership is still pretty peaky. The peaks are lower, obviously, but the ridership is still pretty peaky. In the afternoon, you might have, it starts a little earlier because you have like construction workers going home, that sort of thing. But by and large, the ridership is, I think, peakier than we had expected when the pandemic started.
Now, do you own the track that you're running on, or do you have to lease that from Freight Rail, or how does that work?
So Long Island is all ours, right? Metro North, as I said, on the, within the state of Connecticut. New Haven line is the busiest line by far for Metro North. Okay. And, we have an underlying service agreement with the state of Connecticut for the service that we run between, on the Connecticut side of the line, right, between GCT and New Haven.
So I guess what I was asking that was, are you able to make any adjustments and headways, or how many vehicles you're offering to kind of reflect what the current realities appear to be on ridership?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly looking at that, no question. I mean, I think that I think that we want to be responsive to what what the ridership patterns that we're seeing out there. So one of the things that we're certainly looking at, especially on the Metro North side, because we don't have, on the Long Island side, things are a bit more complicated because we have a 40% increase in service that's scheduled to start imminently, right? So, I think we want to see what that ridership looks like and have those ridership patterns kind of develop before we make decisions with respect to, what the future is going to look like. I think, we've got sort of an interesting few months as we see what's going to happen with respect to people migrating over to the new service and how many new riders we're able to attract. On the Metro North side, yeah, one of the things that we're actively looking at is, do we want to potentially change service that we're offering on Mondays and Fridays, given that the demand is just different.
Right.
It's different from the weekends. The patterns on Mondays and Fridays don't look the same as Saturday and Sunday. But they sure as heck don't look the same as they do on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday either. So we're actively looking at whether we want to change, what it is that we're providing on Mondays and Fridays.
Talk to us about that 40% increase in service that you're getting in Long Island Rail. What's that about?
Yeah, I mean, so that's Grand Central Madison, right?
Right.
So we have these opportunities for the new reverse commute based upon the third track. We're going to be bringing service into Grand Central, and it's a very robust service that we're going to be bringing into Grand Central. So it's really a reimagining of sort of the traditional Long Island Railroad service, which, it's a beautiful terminal. It's a fantastic service. I mean, it brings you to East Midtown. But it is changing the way that we have historically offered service. So, for example, there are going to be very, very, very few through trains to Atlantic Terminal. So as part of the East Side Access Project, there was a separate platform that was constructed to allow largely what's going to look like a shuttle service between Jamaica, which is a major sort of transfer hub for us, and Atlantic Terminal. So the frequency of service will be better, but the people who are used to taking a connecting train to Atlantic Terminal, that's a big change for them because they're going to have to transfer to a different train. And the scheduled connections at Jamaica, which have always really been part of the Long Island Railroad experience, change at Jamaica, that's going to go away as well because with the additional service, the throughput that you need to be able to support two major New York City terminals, it doesn't allow for those kinds of, cross-platform transfers. So again, that's going to be a real change for our customers. So, it's going to take people, a little bit to be able to, get used to the fact that the service is changing so dramatically. But I think once they see the benefits of the new terminal, the fact that it's East Midtown, the connectivity with Metro North, the choice that it gives them with respect to getting to their destination, we're really, really excited about that change.
That is good. And you've got such a rich history on that line. I know my dad grew up in New York City and told me he used to ride it back in the 40s out to Long Island.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. He told me those stories many times and how it was cheap. I think it was maybe a nickel back then or something.
Yeah,
he said you could ride. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that financing. How is the service financed and how's the budget looking going forward?
Yeah, I don't know that MTA and the railroads, as I said, are part of MTA is that different from the rest of the industry, right? I mean, we were very, very fortunate to get the support that we got from Congress to get us through the worst of the COVID, drop off in ridership, which was, as we all know, very precipitous, right? In March of 2020, the first couple of months of 2020, we were looking to surpass what we had done in previous years, and by the end of the month, we were carrying, 5% of our pre-COVID ridership and, really, really struggled for a while. I mean, I think 2022 generally for both railroads was actually a pretty solid year. We added more service back. We added more frequent express service back. So we are, seeing, really over the course of 2022 saw a nice bump up in ridership, and we're very gratified to see that. But, the hybrid work patterns really, kind of changed the paradigm for commuter rail. And those don't seem to be going away anytime soon. So, it leaves us, we're, given that we're so, heavily dependent upon the fare box, you've got that gap there. So, MTA is actively engaged in terms of conversations with elected officials in terms of trying to identify alternative sources of funding to be able to plug that gap. Our chairman, General Lieber, has been talking about how, transit is and has always been in New York sort of like air and water. It's a public service that needs to be supported. It really is what makes New York and the New York experience possible. So there's an active effort underway now to be able to make the case for sort of additional dedicated funding, but also, not for nothing, to sort of put pressure on the MTA operating agencies to be as efficient as possible in terms of where and how we provide service, right? So we need to, we need to be very, thoughtful with respect to the possibility of efficiencies within our own operations, because we can't ask for additional public fundings unless we've really, tried to do business differently given the kind of reality in which we find ourselves now.
Yeah, somebody was talking to me recently and they were asking me, why did I think, because I talked to transit agencies all over the world, why did I think that most Americans don't see transit as really woven into the fabric of their life like it is in Europe? And, the best answer I can come up with is the density of the cities in Europe and the small countries and areas there is that it's required. Like I'm headed over to Singapore to meet with Jeremy Yap at LTA in a couple of weeks, and he's told me the same thing. It's such a dense city, you can't really make the city work without transit.
Right.
And that's the case for cities like Washington, D.C., where I was at last night at the Eno thing, New York, others. I mean, talk to us about that kind of the rich tradition of transit, but also the fact that really the city doesn't work without it.
That's absolutely true. Traffic in New York is terrible. And I think sort of nationwide, I think, after COVID, traffic came back, to pre-COVID levels and then some, right? If you want to get from point A to point B, anywhere in the New York Metropolitan Area, a car isn't necessarily the best way to do it, right? So the connectivity that the subway system provides within the city of New York and the commuter rails provide, throughout the suburban network, it really, it was throughout the pandemic, it got essential workers where they needed to go. I mean, those were those were the folks that were riding during the worst of the pandemic, were the firefighters and, the police officers and, the MTA workers, right? Those were the ones who were riding and to be able to continue to kind of serve the region and to be able to, kind of spur the economic recovery that we need post-COVID. I mean, the railroads and the subways and the buses, they're all part of that. You really, New York is not New York without it. And I think the other thing too is just it's the democracy of it all. You've got stockbrokers, you've got essential workers, you've got delivery people. I mean, everybody takes the subway, everybody takes the train. It mixes everybody, right?
I just recently, a couple months ago, I interviewed Rich Davey for the show, and we were talking about how it all connects. So the commuter rail services that come into the city, there's good connectivity at certain hubs, right? With the bus network and the subway.
Absolutely.
Do you see, I mean, how does that work for fares? Do people have a shared fare, card, or do they have to pay multiple times, or how does that work in New York?
Well, the one thing to talk about actually is Omni, which I don't know whether Rich spoke about that too. I mean, that's sort of the next generation of the replacement of the Metro card, right? So, we're trying to, figure out how to integrate the commuter rails now into the Omni experience so that it becomes sort of a, kind of a seamless, singularly branded product that everybody can use. I mean, the railroads technically have their own tariffs and, it's a different kind of system because it's a zone-based system and all that. But to what extent can we have a single branded thing, whether it's your phone or a card or whatever, that provides a little bit more of a unified experience?
Yeah, that's what they were telling me about. They're working on at Metro too, to kind of connect in with everything. Everybody's piloting that. I mean, it's obviously the next step in the customer experience, improving the customer experience, right? To make it so they don't have to pay multiple times.
Yeah. And I do think to that point, I mean, I think technology, we have to be, thoughtful that, what are people looking for that we're trying to attract back? And I think technology is really at the heart of that. So, as an example, one of the things that, both railroads did sort of in the immediate wake of COVID was to implement technology that allows us to gauge how many people are in each car by the weight of the car. That's been enormously helpful, sort of in the immediate aftermath of COVID. People didn't want to go in crowded cars. So we were able to give them information with respect to how crowded the cars are. And they could sort of decide where they want to stand on the platform and kind of plan their travel accordingly. So that's been really great. And we also use it as an input in terms of schedule development. To your point a little while ago is, how will we kind of tailoring our schedules around the ridership that we're seeing out there. So that's been a really important input that we look at all the time. The other sort of innovation, not really an innovation, but the other kind of change for our customers was we had a Metro North train time app, and we had a Long Island Railroad train time app, and you didn't have a unified app for customers at both railroads. So earlier, just this past summer, I think in August, we launched a unified train time app to be able to purchase tickets for both railroads and plan your travel on both railroads. And you could see where your train is, and it's getting rave reviews on at the App Store, and it's been just really a wonderful amenity for our customers to be able to plan all of their rail travel in a single app, buy their tickets in the app, and that's the kind of stuff that I think our customers are looking for and they expect from us as we begin to attract more and more of them to the system.
We'll continue with Paul's interview with Kathy Rinaldi in just a moment, but first, Mike's Minute with Mike Bismeyer.
Hi, this is Mike Bismeyer, Regional Sales Director for Proterra, and this is Mike's Minute, where we talk about leadership, mentorship, and kindness with the hopes it'll inspire you to pay it forward. 2023 is now upon us, and it's great to be speaking with you all again, and I look forward to the year ahead. I'll continue to chat about leadership, mentorship, and kindness. However, it's exciting to see Paul and the Unplugged team digging deeper into leadership with regular segments that will be bringing us insightful knowledge from our industry leaders that will continue to benefit us and allow us to enhance our personal toolkits. Being the inaugural year of the CUNA Mentorship Program in which I'm participating, I'm also looking forward to reporting out in the future and sharing some of the key learnings that I'll be privy to, working and collaborating with the mentee that I've been fortunate enough to be partnered with. That's the future of transportation and something that I'm always excited about. I do also want to take a closer look at kindness this year, something that I've always been passionate about, and in 2022, several articles discuss kindness as being an integral part of the future of leadership. Kindness is easy, it's free, and it's contagious. Just last week, while at a company event, I was honored when a team member announced that they'd been inspired by my continued random acts of kindness and had asked the restaurant to package up some food that was not committed. On our way back to the hotel, we handed off to folks experiencing homelessness. Truly overwhelming, and it's the little things that quite often make the biggest difference for those in need. If you have an example of a random act of kindness, a company initiative focused around kindness, or just someone you want to call out that has gone above and beyond, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be sure to send a shout out or a mention in one of the upcoming segments. Look me up on LinkedIn, Mike Bismeyer, or Kindness is Cool by The Biz, and I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great week. Kindness is cool.
That's great. Kathy, tell us something about yourself, your career, and how you got to where you're at. I'd be interested to find out some about that. I mean, you've had a great career, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of people come to these jobs in different ways. So I'm actually a lawyer, and never thought I'd work at a railroad. Right? He's just when I an English major and a lawyer. So I worked for the New York State court system for actually a long time, and kind of aspired to be a judge. That's what I thought I was going to be when I grew up. And at one point, I accepted a job with the governor of the state of New York in the governor's counsel's office. And part of my portfolio in that position, this was late 90s, early 2000s, was transportation. So transportation, public authorities, environment, energy, that sort of stuff. So that was part of my portfolio in the governor's counsel's office in New York. And then from there, was able to transition into MTA's general counsel. So that was sort of my first leap to MTA, was in the general counsel role, and served in that role for a while. Ultimately, also served as the Long Island Railroad general counsel. And then at some point thereafter was asked to come back to headquarters as the chief of staff for the MTA chairman, and served in that capacity for a while. And then from there moved over to Metro North as executive vice president. And then when my boss, the president, retired, I became the president of Metro North, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it always warms my heart to see an attorney, as one myself, see an attorney in the top jobs. Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. I know so many unhappy lawyers, right? I mean, people go to law school, like me, like liberal arts major, went to law school.
I was a history major, and then did that, and I knew I didn't want to practice law. Just,
I mean, I practiced for like 5 minutes, right? I practiced for 5 minutes. I wasn't happy, didn't enjoy it. So now I'm in a job that I never could have envisioned when I was in law school. But it's just been, the ride of a lifetime. I'm just, so honored and thrilled to be in the position of both railroads. It's been just terrific.
That is great. Tell us about what you see. I mean, in all those capacities that you got to see a good context for transportation, commuter rail in general. I mean, you're in a role where you're talking to commuter executives all over the world, I'm sure. And where do you think we're headed as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, right? I mean, I think nobody knows. And I think that's kind of the scary thing. I do think, sort of picking up on what I said a little while ago, I think we need to think bigger with respect to who our ridership is and can be, because we don't have a choice, right? I mean, right. I think, you can't necessarily assume. I think there was sort of a brief snapshot in time where people thought we'd flatten the curve and we'd be back to normal in 6 months and like everything would be as it was before. And that's just not going to happen, right? So I think we just need to sort of accept the reality of that, keep the customers that we have, attract more that want to ride with us, and just sort of develop a kind of a philosophy and a service plan to be innovative and thoughtful with respect to who else we might be able to attract back to the system, which is why, to my point a little while ago, I'm kind of excited about the potential for that connectivity between Metro North and Long Island, right? That never existed before. It exists now. When East Side Access was envisioned, a million years ago, it was largely, daily commuters from Long Island who work on the East Side. It was really a commutation sort of centered project, and that's how we talked about it. And I think it's still, that, of course, but I think that in terms of how we talk about it, I think we should talk about it in sort of a broader, more comprehensive way, and try to unlock the potential for kind of pulling in riders that were not necessarily envisioned when the project was first, kicked off, whenever that was.
Yeah.
A million years ago. So.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a comparable effort underway on the Metro North side, right? So there was recently a groundbreaking for Penn Access, which will be, a New Haven line service along the Amtrak right of way. So that will allow there to be a direct New Haven line connection for Metro North into Penn Station. Again, you've got, connectivity there that doesn't currently exist. And, will that provide the opportunity for, both the CBD bound travel as well as, reverse bound travel for folks who live in communities in the Bronx who don't currently have a commuter rail experience.
That's great. So connectivity between lines is a great way to promote new riders. I mean, I'm sure, do you guys have your own marketing department that reaches out and tells people, hey, you can ride to the museums or ball games or nightlife, those kind of things? Yeah. They may not have traditionally promotions and discounted tickets with destinations around the city and all that stuff. I mean, being the head of both railroads, I mean, summer in the Hamptons is, sort of a big thing on Long Island. So, you get a lot of summer rail traffic on weekends on Long Island, and fall in the Hudson Valley is a big draw in Metro North territory. So, to what extent now, if you do have that connectivity, do you create new markets to be able to take advantage of some of sort of the unique attributes of both service territories? And we really want to build on that and, explore other opportunities to be able to do that. That's awesome. Anything else you want to talk about today?
I think that it's a uniquely challenging time for transit executives out there. But challenging, but also really stimulating at the same time. We're having to be thoughtful about our ridership and our service in a way that I frankly don't think we've ever been challenged to do. And I think that, it's very energizing, I think, in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Yeah. Jeremy App, I had him on the podcast a while ago, and he was telling me, to be honest with you, Paul, we're kind of glad we don't have the peak of the peak anymore, because we're able to take some of all those extra resources we had to throw at it and blend it and reach more people than maybe we have in the past. So it sounds like you're taking this opportunity to this inflection point in the history of public transportation in New York City to reevaluate and repurpose some of what you've done and create new connections for your customers.
Yeah. And also to sort of think, in terms of, there's been a lot of discussion in recent years about, sustainability and climate change, and how do we make the case and how do we build upon the existing case for the fact that, this kind of travel really, from a climate change perspective is something that we want to encourage more people to gravitate towards. But yeah, no, it's an exciting time for a lot of reasons. And I've got great teams at both railroads, and then, we're getting down to it and trying to bring as many people back as possible.
Well, thank you, Catherine Rinaldi, for sharing with us some of your plans and the successes you've got coming up. Can't wait till you have the announcement on the Grand Central Madison. Hope I can visit it sometime this year. I love taking the train up into New York City from down here in Maryland, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much. It's been great being with you today.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Transit Unplugged, the podcast. How would you like to see behind-the-scenes footage of the agencies that Paul visits? Then be sure to check out the new Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube, where transit evangelist Paul Comfort dives into the culture, the food, and the transit of major cities around the world. You'll see the operations control centers, how maintenance shops work, and the latest innovations taking place at agencies around the globe as we work together to improve the lives of our transit riders and our communities. Be sure to subscribe to Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube or at transitunplugged.com.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged In-Depth with our special guest, Kathy Rinaldi. And next week on Transit Unplugged News and Views, our newsmaker interview will be with Rakesh Shah, head of Open Innovation at Transport for London, and our leadership guest will be Larnzell Harper, manager of training and development at Via Metropolitan Transit Authority in San Antonio, Texas. Now, in the meantime, don't forget to visit transitunplugged.com to sign up for the newsletter, so you're always in the loop with what's going on with the show. And if you need to reach us, you can email us at info@transitunplugged.com. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.